Welcome to the Suicide Prevention Show. We're part of the suicide prevention movement, making suicide, especially teen suicide, a thing of the past. I'm Jackie Simmons, your host. We're going into the world where angels fear to tread. We are going into the world of food and our relationship with food and how this can make us insane and how to get back to sanity. Please help me welcome to the studio our next guest, Dr. Pat Boulgne. So, Dr. Pat, are you in the house? All you need to do is unmute and bring on your camera.
Here we are.
Yay, it's magic. Woo!
Woohoo!
Dr. Pat, thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Always love doing things with you.
We do have a good time together.
We do.
Now, this is a topic near and dear to my waistline.
Mine too.
Yeah. So when we first talked about this, and it was, people, a lot of my speakers, go, well, what does my topic have to do with suicide prevention? And it was an easy connect the dots with you. But first, help us connect the dots in your world. Take us into your world and let us know who you are and how you got there and why is this important?
Well, I'm going to start with your last question. It's important because it's not what you eat, it's how you absorb what you eat. So if you eat poorly, then you're going to have other repercussions over a long period of time or a short period of time. So my background is a chiropractor, I'm an acupuncturist, I have background in lifestyle medicine, functional medicine certified. I've been a physician for over 38 years, I think, and at least in the end of my third decade. And I've treated thousands of people, and to help them live longer, live better, fix their health, do their life.
Got it. Okay, so that's why this is important to you. It's been on your mind for a long time. It's been where you've been working with people for a long time.
I do it every day.
Yeah, got it. It's your everyday world. So before this was your everyday world, what brought you into the world of health, especially around food?
Well, I started experimenting when I was around 9 years old. I did, I always been very attracted to science. And I can remember doing this experiment and calling my father up at work saying, can you bring me some phenolphthalein home? And my father worked, he said, what's phenolphthalein? Phenolphthalein is an acid indicator, and they use it as a preservative in a lot of beer.
Oh.
So when I asked my father to bring it home, he worked at Allied Chemicals, and he just said, what do you need phenolphthalein for? And so I told him I was doing this acid-base, indicator for my science project. And that science project won me second place in the state of Michigan that year. And my teacher entered me. And unbeknownst to me, he never said anything until he goes, by the way. And so I've always been interested in food. I always had this, I would go out and experiment. In the wintertime, I thought, if you eat ice cream, then you won't be cold, and I did silly things like that. It's just like if you, and I would make foods together. So it always I grew up in a kind of an Italianish type area. And the Italians that lived next door to me, I always was eating at their house. And they always were they had goats in the backyard occasionally and chickens, and they always had very fresh food. And I never was very attracted to candy, growing up. And I never felt good when I had it. So I just never really, I never gravitated towards it. And then when I decided to go to chiropractic school, one of my teachers was I had a nutrition course. This guy was brilliant. Things that he said way before they proved them happened. So everyone would go, oh, Dr. Chappell said that. I remember when he said that. So when I'm looking at people that I had for like simple rules for, my patients when I was in clinic and school. And then when I got out, I ended up having two big mentors for, a kinesiology and how food interrelates to your diet, and how eating, food could be medicine. And, taking the right type of supplementation, because people didn't eat properly. And so they were their bank of nutrition for their bodies were deleted. And when they got sick, they didn't know why they got sick. So there was just all these kind of pieces of the puzzle really came to, being all glued in and making the big picture when I graduated from school, and I found this doctor named Dr. Frank, he's no longer alive, but he made sense. I saw him do so many interesting things with people through adjusting and making recommendations for nutrition. It was really amazing.
Sounds really amazing.
Very transformational.
So what happened next? I mean, how did you get from there to where you are now?
Well, I just kept on studying. I was my father's worst nightmare. My father kept up, you're never going to not go to school. And I'm a data dumper, I'm a data learner. And if something interests me, I took it to the next level. So when I was studying specifically under my mentor, this Dr. Frank, in a technique called total body modification at the time, I learned everything and how to like reverse things. I had people who came into my office with the flu who left without the flu. Or 4 hours later, they're like, I don't know what you did, but I feel phenomenal. And so there's times that I've been on trips with, when I was in Egypt one time and somebody got a little bit of stomach issues, and the medical doctor was there, and I came flying in saying, what's going on? And I worked on this person as a chiropractor and doing kinesiology, and I had specific supplementation with me and gave it to her, and an hour later she was down having dinner with us. There's just, I have had some really interesting turnarounds for people. And then I found a doctor by the name of Jeff Bland, who was coined the grandfather of functional medicine. And when I heard him talk, I was like, wow, this guy put the right side and the left side together for chronic illness and disease. And made it so that when you understood why you had that, you could, by changing your diet and changing your lifestyle choices, some of those situations could be absolutely reversed, like diabetes, the second portion of diabetes, like type 2. And there was like other things that he related, that chronic fatty degenerative diseases, back to, what's going on in your gut. And, and being able to fix the gut. And I always say, fix the gut, change life. So we know now that depression and anxiety come from the gut. It doesn't come from the brain. Because you have to be able to assimilate the foods that you eat and have them be utilized appropriately in the body. And if there's toxins in them, per se, we'll just use that as an example right now, like if there's, if you're someplace where you had a huge exposure to mosquito repellent or something, then that's got to go it goes in your system, it goes to your liver, and the liver's got to get rid of it. And if the liver can't keep on doing those toxicity, dumps back into the intestinal tract, it gets stored in blood, brain, bone, and fat. There's so many, there's nobody in the United States, I would probably say, that doesn't have some level of heavy metal issues. And it can affect how you perceive the world. It can affect how you function. And, it definitely, there's a relationship to those things and other chronic illnesses and diseases that we see today that are so prevalent and almost in epidemic proportions.
So what's the cure?
Well, one of the, there is like, I say you got to fix your gut, change your life, because inflammation starts someplace. So the first part of inflammation really starts when you're born. 9 out of 10 births have some level of trauma in the neck. So that creates an inflammatory process that the body's starting to work on as soon as you come out the chute. And then if you can get that fixed, that's why you see a chiropractor for the mechanical portion of that. And likewise, then you have these other traumas that happen to you when you like trip, you fall, you get in a car accident, you bump your head, you have the cupboard door open. I've done this more than a couple times, unfortunately. in the kitchen, and I come up and I nip the corner of the cupboard, because I drop something and go to pick it up, and so you can sometimes, even if you're very sensitive with your body and in tune, you can almost feel that cascade down your spine, and end up at your weakest link. Because we all have a weakest link. You just have to know where that weakest link is. So you have to first go back and you have to make sure you're structurally sound. Then you have to get rid of toxins. Like, you have to look at the foods that you eat, the air that you breathe. There's air purifiers that people can buy for their houses.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take a look at, water that you drink, how you're drinking the water, what's the source of the water. It's not all water is made the same. I mean, there's many times you see, especially down in Florida, when I lived there, I would see these flats of water sitting in the sun. I would never drink flats of water sitting in the sun, ever. Because the temperature differential makes the plastic go into the water, and then you drink the plastic, and that can't be processed through your system. It gets stored in, in fat tissue, and that's where toxins are usually stored.
That's really kind of interesting. Okay, so what you're talking about is the if it's sitting out in a glass, would you have the same hesitation?
I suggest drinking water at room temperature. So having water in a glass would be different than having water in plastic, and getting, a good, reverse osmosis type filter for the water that you drink, because all tap water in the United States, for sure, has some level of chlorine and fluorine in it. And fluorine is considered a neurotoxin.
All right, so without going too far down that rabbit hole, because I can certainly go down that one with you. And what I really want to do is help, how do you, in a world that is full of things that we know are toxic, and in a spectrum of belief systems that says our body needs to have challenges to some level, that we have to have some challenges for our immune system to even develop. If you never skinned your knee, you would have to have some challenges to your body for it to develop, just like we don't build muscle or bone strength if we don't challenge them. So we have that spectrum that is available to everyone, with these attitudes about what it really takes for us to be healthy. Where do we find some sanity in here? Because the far extreme of zero toxins is one may be possible if you can totally control your environment, but then you would never go outside because we have toxins in the air. So where do we find sanity in all of this? How do we get back to some sense of comfort and peace of mind? That's what I'm looking for around this whole topic of how do you eat.
And we're going to go there right now. How you get to the point that you have that sanity around it is, first off, you have to be willing to do your research. One thing to do is to always eat as organic as possible. When my mother grew up, and your mother grew up, and when I was a kid, we had organic food, and that was normal. Now you don't. You have foods that have been so altered that eating them is ultimately, for a long period of time, can be detrimental to your health. So choosing, when you ask yourself, is this food good for me or not? Sometimes the answer in your head immediately. It says no. Should I have ice cream? No. Can I have ice cream? Sure. Can you have ice cream often? I don't think so. I think you got to have that awareness about where some basic foods are, because your health isn't just about the foods that you eat. It's how you being able to make better choices going out. So if you know that even if you like to go out and eat, you don't have to eat at Burger King. You can go eat at Sweet Pea, for instance, that has fresh salads. And you can learn how to food combine. So you use foods in your body and choose foods that are in those combinations that work for your highest good in your body when you're metabolizing them. So, how you make sense of it is you make a list of probably all the foods that are your favorite foods, and then ask yourself, how do I feel after I eat them? So if you feel sluggish, if you want to go to sleep, that type of thing, then you're probably eating something that you have sensitivity to.
Mm.
And, and just because it's an avocado and everyone thinks that it's a monosaturated fat and it's so good for you, doesn't mean that it's good for you. You've got to say like, okay, does it fit me? And I eat avocados, do I feel good?
All right. So it could be a good food, but not good for me individually because of some sensitivity. Oh, you mean as in we're all unique and different even when it comes to healthy eating?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, there's some people, I know of an individual case of a woman who they couldn't figure out why, but she had, bleeding from, her gut for 10 years on and off. She went through Western medicine. At the very end, they said, hey, you know what? We don't know what to do, because they could never figure out what the root cause and where that inflammation was settling in her system or in what triggered it. So she, they were going to put the bag on her. She had 5 kids. She goes, that does not work. And I can't go swimming with my kids. I can't play with them anymore. And, it would just shut down her life. She was in just her early 30s or mid 30s at the time. And she wasn't my patient. She was a patient of a colleague of mine. And so what he did is he did a food reactivity test on her. And her favorite foods, avocados is the reason I'm using this as an example, came up. And when she stopped eating avocados, the bleeding stopped. And a year later, her colonoscopy looked perfect.
Wow.
So when you know what foods you're reactive to or what foods your body totally cannot eat, you just don't eat them. It's not rocket science. And so and then putting foods together so that the chemistry of them works, like, having a steak and potato, it's not a good choice. It takes a long time for those two things that work together. One cancels the other and it sits in your gut and it putrefies. So
all right. Wait a minute. I'm not, for people who are not willing to give up steak and they're not willing to give up potatoes, what are better combinations?
Well, the better combination would be steak and vegetables. And it isn't that you can't eat the potato, it's the portion size of the 8-ounce steak to the potato. So it's just understanding what a regular portion size is, steak to potato to vegetables in carbohydrates. So how people get that, it is the easy way to do it is have your steak and have a bunch of green leafy vegetables.
There we go. Steak and a salad. And then what? Can we have the baked potato for another meal? Or yeah, I'm thinking dessert, but I gather that's
could
not
have a very small, like, some Idaho potatoes are, like a pound, and that's, and like look at what the portion size is. So usually raw for carbohydrates like that is 9 grams or a cup. And for cooked vegetables, it's a half a cup.
Okay.
So, you could figure out like, if you had a 4-ounce steak, you could have like 2, cups of vegetables. You could have a half a cup of, mashed potatoes. And, just take a look at like what that size is to like what the steak is. And like, you can eyeball it. You can say like, wow, that's a lot of steak. And I have this, it doesn't look balanced to you.
Trusting your internal guidance system regarding balance and noticing that when some places supersize things, they don't supersize the protein usually, they supersize the carbs. And there's a couple of reasons for that. From a business standpoint, that's a big deal because carbs are less expensive than proteins. So it's a better financial decision for a restaurant to supersize the carbs. But for our health, it doesn't sound like it's such a great idea.
No, you have to, if you, a simple rule of thumb that I can give out is that if you're going to have a snack, and, because that snack, about an ounce of protein, an ounce of steak, or an ounce and a half of fish, or an egg is about 7 grams of protein. And so if you're going to pair it with a vegetable, you could have that, cup of, green leafy vegetables or a half a cup of cooked. And then you could just drizzle some olive oil, that type of thing on it with a touch of lemon juice. I mean, it's simple.
A lot of really simple things. You're going to have to do that recipe again. Okay. I mean, I know it's some of the things that we're going to be talking about. Let's break it down a little more, actually take it down the trail a little more. When people trust their gut, literally, they trust how they feel after they eat something. They trust how what their gut reacts to what their eyes see on a plate. When they start trusting themselves more, what do you notice? What happens first?
Well, there's things their diet comes around, so that's good. They want to be more active, so they exercise. They get better sleep. They have better sleep hygiene, the posture that they're sleeping in. They have a better mental attitude, and they functionally, their structure function portion of it gets fed the right things so that you don't have inflammation in the joints and that type of thing. Or if you have an issue with the joint, it doesn't seem to flare up.
Got it.
So when you eat in that way, people who have low back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, pain in the neck, when you eat, you should make it a diary and find out when I eat, a sandwich with one slice of bread and a nice protein on it and a vegetable, I don't have a problem. But when I have 2 slices of bread, 3 hours later, my low back's starting to scream at me. So a lot of foods can push people to have more pain in certain areas of their body, and it's something to pay attention to because food is medicine. And if you find that eating some foods you feel better on, then eat them.
There we go. All right. So it is about, wow, we've got some feedback on my end. Sorry. It is about the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is just, are you paying attention to the information that your body is trying to give you every time you eat something or don't eat something? The information in that avocado for that one person was, don't eat me, and yet for the majority of people, it doesn't cause a problem. So no one outside of my skin is what it sounds like. That there's not a diet book in the world that's going to be able to design the diet that's good for Jackie, or the food plan. Will change the language, get away from the diet term. There's nothing outside of my skin that's going to create the ideal food plan for me, is what I'm hearing. But go ahead.
No, what I would say to you is that, knowing what works for you, and a lot of it, it's like if you ask me, what's my favorite diet for most people that work for them, and I would tell you it's the Mediterranean diet, or the zone diet. I really quite like that Barry Sears said, but what I don't like about the zone diet is that he doesn't really food combine correctly in some of his recommendations. And so I would never have blueberries with, as a dessert with steak and salad. It just doesn't, even though if you did the proportion sizes of that correctly, it doesn't in my head go together because of you can look on Google for a food combining chart, and so that you can better put foods together that will help you. And
that I'm going to challenge you on. What is a good, reputable food combining chart that we can trust it to be giving us accurate information? Because the Google machine is kind of crazy, if you know what I mean.
Look at images. They're all the same. There's all food combining charts that I ever looked at on Google. They are telling you proteins, to sweet fruits, don't eat. So there's a chart that, fits everyone's brain. I have a chart that fits my brain. If people want that chart, I can easily make it available to your guest today, as a gift. It's a chart that I use, that I recommend to people. There's, and if sometimes I have, people, depending upon how they arrange things or learn things in their head, they go I can't do that chart, and go, well, then take that chart, because that's, a basic chart that works for majority of people, and find one that when you look at it, you go, oh, aha, I got it. And because they're all basically, food combining charts are pretty much all the same when you look on the imaging. It's just like the visual part of it and how people ascertain that information from that chart.
Awesome. We will take your recommendation for a food combining chart as a gift for everyone who is on the show today. I think that would be a great gift. Now, I'm going to start opening up for questions. People can just pop them into the chat, and if we get a whole bunch, we'll see if we can maybe unmute somebody and let them ask you. Because I think that the biggest challenge that we're going to have is the fact that there's so much misinformation, there's so much confusion out on what it is to be healthy eating. When they flip the whole food pyramid, you know, all the years that we were given one set of information and then they flipped it and they said, oh, that was all wrong. And they went kind of the other extreme, and there's not a lot of consistency out there. So,
well, one thing I would tell you is don't look at any of the pyramids.
there we go.
Forget about it, you know, and that would be the one big thing to do, because none of them, there are some of them that they try to make sense, and some people have tried to like use the pyramid because it's so as a platform for general knowledge, you know, but it's not what really is. It's like the food combining chart for me gives you the information that you need to know how to put, you know, foods together. And, you know, I give it away for my clients. And I also have, you know, I use it to, you know, help my LinkedIn connections that a better information, you know, because they always share with me their health hacks. And so when I look at what somebody tells me that they eat, I said, oh, wow, I go, you know, have you ever thought about not putting those two things together? Or when people use things like, you know, kale and that whole food group should actually be blanched before you put it in a blender. You know, it's not really, you know, it's too potent in a raw form. You know, so just slightly cooking it, you'll, if you like kale, it will assimilate better in your system. Anybody?
That's one of the really interesting things, is that there are some vegetables that really don't belong on a raw food diet. And it's not common to help you know, for people to understand, because I know people who don't have stoves, they don't have microwaves, they don't do anything but raw food. And sometimes they're not the healthiest people I know.
Yeah.
So it was very confusing for me. So that's why this conversation about how personal this is. It's not even a one size fits a blood type, which was one of the diets that I had explored. The most successful food plan I ever used was back in high school when I used the grapefruit diet. And I found my grapefruit diet book recently. I mean, this book has traveled around the world with me. And it's just this little book. And one of the things it says, and I'm like, oh, I get to ask Dr. Pat, you know, it says coffee is the antithesis of having a healthy weight, that it actually causes you to not lose weight. And I was like, is that true? How, you know, I figured before I gave up coffee, I'd ask. Have you ever, is that a good thought?
I drink coffee.
Oh, well, there we go.
I drink coffee, and I make sure my coffee comes from a source that's not full of mold. Because the problem with the coffee beans coming in from another country is they're sprayed with pesticides and chemicals. And, you know, then you have the problem of storage. Even with any of your fruits and vegetables that you get in, there is that problem of mold, not necessarily mold that you can see or mold you can't see, but coffee has a big culprit for having mold in it. And so a lot of times people who have, you know, a reaction to coffee, they're not having a reaction to the actual caffeine, they're having a reaction to the chemicals that it's treated with, and where that's speeding your heart up. They're having a reaction to, you know, the chemicals, they're having a reaction to the mold, especially if you have mold sensitivities. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I guess there's a lot of, okay. When I hear myself start talking, if I have to go 5 words or 6 words in before I get the static cleared up. So I apologize if anyone is having that issue. The journey to understand that it's not what we think it is. It's not what it looks like. You know, when you're talking about food sensitivities, we're not talking about one food necessarily being bad. We're just talking about one food not necessarily being best for you.
Yes, that, and also like the quantity. I mean, there's, you know, when you're looking at supersizing something, you know, if you look at orange juice, for instance, or grapefruit juice, the serving size really is 1/3 of a cup. Remember back like in the 50s, my mother used to have these little tiny juice cups about this big, you know, and It's the serving size is like 1/3. So that's about a half or small orange. We'll use orange juice, right?
Mhm.
When you get an 8-ounce glass of orange juice, you probably have 4 oranges. No one sits there and eats 4 oranges at one time. So why would you drink it? And so, and fruit isn't necessarily processed. Fructose is processed through the liver. It's not processed in the stomach like glucose is, and that's where, fruits have a tendency to be more of a, it has a different type of interaction in the liver, and it's how it's processed out through the system. And the liver's job, I mean, so many people ask me about detox. So when they ask me about detox, like, it isn't like your liver does the function of detox. It doesn't detox. You can't detox your liver, and you don't want to purge it because you don't want all those things to go into your system, because then it defeats the purpose of the reason, like it creates more of an imbalance.
Okay, I'm gonna break that down, because what I think I heard you say was that the liver's job is to filter the toxins.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone comes along and thinks it's a good idea to flush all of those toxins into the very system that it's designed to protect from those toxins.
They get recycled.
So what do we do to keep, so you're saying don't do a liver flush? Because
I would tell people not to do a liver flush unless they know their gut, that their gut is in good shape. Because people have signs and symptoms of inflammation in their gut. They have bloating, they have diarrhea, or it alternates with constipation, or they eat a certain food and you're having a reaction to the food. There's a problem for a lot of people now with lectins, which are like tomatoes have the seeds. So lectins act as like, there's only one lining in the gut. So the lectin attaches itself to the gut and it kind of punches a hole through the gut. So that's where like leaky gut type stuff happens. So some people who are gluten sensitive really have a lectin problem and not a gluten problem, because and what the lectin is the defense mechanism of a vegetable. And so when you eat these things with seeds, they have a tendency to be very sticky and they stick to the gut, and then it irritates the area where that's at. And then you have foods that come in and then filter out into the system way before their time. And then it has to go to the liver, and the liver has to detox that. And when the liver gets overwhelmed, it doesn't know what to do with them because it can't keep on putting them in the gut and recycling them. So it stores them in blood, brain, bone, and fat. So the thing is like, how do I get my liver to do its job? There's ways and there's questionnaires that, I offer, where I look at if somebody's a candidate to do a detoxification. And then I also look at what their gut's doing. I have a preliminary questionnaire that tells me if somebody's, like, are you a candidate or not? I've only found in the last 5 years one person who's done my questionnaire that I'm going like, oh my God, are you sure these are your right answers? Are you sure that you didn't overthink them? In 5 years, I thought that was amazing. I was shocked, but I was really happy for the person, for sure.
Got it. Okay, so the odds are that it's complicated and that they're going to want to get more information. And so we're going to share your LinkedIn profile link with everyone. That'll be in the show notes. That'll be in the chat box for everyone. And they can explore. And I know you made an offer that if they go to your LinkedIn profile, if they poke around, then they can check in and actually have a conversation with you. The Fix Your Health, you have a strategy session for them. And I'm going to suggest that people actually go and check out what you're all about. Check out your book. And that's a wonderful thing in and of itself. So we'll get the hyperlink in for the LinkedIn profile, and it'll be in the show notes. And we'll drop the link for your book, because that's such an interesting book. So go ahead. Why are you sick, fat, or tired? And that's a really important question, because it's not going to be the same answer for everyone. So the whole concept of eating your way back to sanity is it's a personal journey that's easier to do with a guide. So your book is a great guidebook for people to take and use as a blueprint for everyone. Yeah.
Well, everyone
I
has a
appreciate
weak
that.
link,
Hmm?
you know, and so what the book does is like, and we have 11 organ systems that work together like a Swiss watch.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Swiss watch, when one piece starts to act up, it affects another portion of it. So when you look at, in the book, is it in digital or hard copy, you can take a look at, you know, like where your weakest link is, which will be one of your highest scores. And you can have numerous high scores because it has affected other parts of your organ systems. So when somebody has it, and if you could have a low immunity score, but have these other high scores, but over a period of time, the Swiss watch is going to start running slower and slower, you know, and you want to find out what that link is, and you want to address it, fix it. So you fix your health, and then you can go do your life.
That sounds amazing. Okay, so Katie has put the link for the book into the chat for everyone. And we are just having this exploration because the idea that what we eat affects our sanity, this is a connection that people are starting to talk about more and more. That it's not sometimes what we think it is, that it really is something that we have control over once we understand the rules of the game. You know, once we understand how easy it can be to figure all of these things out. So, Dr. Pat, when it comes to sanity, when did you decide that, I mean, you're a chiropractor, you have all of these other skill sets. When did you decide that this was the fastest path to helping people?
Well, when I've had I have witnessed different things with different people, and I've also witnessed it with myself. And what I have found is that when I have my diet's clean, and I don't eat sugar, because sugar is my big no-no. It's evil. I tell you, it's evil.
Oh, wait, you've got a big no-no we haven't talked about. Oh my God. Okay, so is that for you personally, or is sugar
Everybody.
just across the board? And we're talking now about white granular sugar, simple sugar.
We're talking about sugar. Sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar. A carbohydrate is a sugar. So if you have too many carbohydrates, it can make your ability to concentrate. It can affect your ability to concentrate. It affects your ability to digest your foods correctly. And it is like pouring gasoline on a fire if you have inflammatory processes going on in your body.
Got
So
it.
it's just it's just like if sugar, I would coach my patients and clients, if it's in the first 5 ingredients on a label, don't eat it. You know, if you have to shop in a grocery store, shop on the outside of the grocery store. Don't go down the aisles unless you need stuff, you know, to clean your house, you know, and so that you're like, you know, because you have control over everything that you put in your mouth, you know, in choices. So like, you know, oh, I need to eat something sweet. That doesn't mean you can't ever have something. You just can't do it a lot. And initially, you know, I like, don't eat anything white, you know, sugar, salt, you know, flour, you know, and, you know, stay away from those type of things because it interferes with how you digest your foods and it interferes with how you think. And a big problem that, you know, you just reminded me of something is, you know, when I talk about the 3 pillars of like why people get sick, the first one is the trauma. We talked about that. We talked about toxins, you know, but we haven't really talked about our thoughts. And a lot of people they don't have a handle on their thoughts. So if you're ruminating, if you can't sleep at night and you're thinking like, you know, I got to get up, I'm going to go through my closet again and rearrange it, or get up and take a bath, you know, a hot bath and try to go back to sleep. There's things that you can do, but if you don't have a handle on how to shut off your brain, it can undo any good you do to get rid of the trauma. And any good that you do to get rid of the toxins, it can reverse some of those processes, you know, and women especially, you know, because we have a tendency, you know, we want everyone in our clan to be healthy. And we overdo, we don't take care of ourselves. At the end of the day, you're depleted, you don't have any time for yourself. And those thoughts ruminate. And it's just like, in women, you know, there's a little remedy I can get to share. Cocoa butter helps that good hormone, and and helps decrease the stress.
All right, so now you got to
especially
tell me, cocoa butter on the outside of the skin, or are you talking about ingesting it?
outside of the skin. You can
Okay,
have
just checking.
okay, you can massage the feet, you know, you can do it, you know, you can have someone do it across the back of your shoulders.
Well, that
Everyone
sounds
likes
good.
to have that. You know, you can massage your own hands, or in places where your skin is quite thin. You could put a dab there and just rub it into your system, because 65% of whatever you put on your skin gets absorbed in your body. You know, so it's a little like health hack that I tell women, especially, to like, hey, it's easy to get. You know, most of the time it's in a hard version because it's solid at room temperature, you know, but there, you know, you can look for an organic version of it, and, you know, use a little dabble do ya kind of thing. And, you know, so that you're not like so stuck in that cycle of like thought processes that you can't get beyond.
All right,
You know,
so we're talking about we're going into
affirmation.
the thought interruptions. Thought interrupters, you're up in the middle of the night, you're wide awake, you're laying down, but you're awake, or any other time that you notice that you are caught in a cycle of negative thinking. Do something that is an activity that requires your body to move, even if it's just a little. You mentioned rearranging your closet, you know, cleaning out a drawer, putting away laundry, some kind of mundane, something that doesn't require a lot of decision making. You know, cocoa butter on the arms, on the feet, some kind of activity that doesn't require a lot of decision making, just to get you reconnected to your body in the present moment. Because most of the things that keep us up, the worries and the fears, are either based in the past or projected into the future. They're things that haven't happened yet, or they're things that happened that we don't want to have happen again. And the more we think about them, the more likely they are to happen again. So breaking that cycle is as simple as breaking the pattern. Move your body, do something routine. You know, if all else fails, see if you find somebody you can sort their socks. That usually does it for me. Yeah.
Well, what I do is, and what I recommend also is, I ask myself a question: is there anything I can do about this right now? And if the answer is yes, I turn the lights on, I go do it, you know, and it's, you know, I get it handled and I move on. Just keep moving forward. If I can't, I write the keywords down, whatever my thought process is. I have a pad of paper next to my bed. I write, and so I see it the first thing in the morning, and then I figure out how to fix that problem. And, you know, so that what it does is it takes it off your mind, because it isn't going to change in 8 hours that you're sleeping. It's still going to be there the next day. And it might be like, oh, I forgot to, you know, like put something, you know, in a, you know, and I wanted to send this out to somebody, I forgot, you know, and then you're laying there like, well, you know, okay, how am I going to remember that tomorrow? Just like write it down and move on.
Yeah, write it down and move on. There we go. I love the idea of keeping a book next to the bed. So keeping a book so that if you do wake up and there's something that you're like, I'm afraid I'll forget, you know, just write it down and then go back to sleep, because you know it's going to be there in the morning. And that's the way most of our things are. They're going to be there in the morning. And this will be there in the recording for everyone. So, Dr. Pat, thank you so very, very much for being willing to bring your expertise and bring your time onto the show.
It's been my pleasure, for sure.
All right, so you'll see the links in the show notes, in the chat box. Check out the book, Why Are You Sick, Tired, and Fat? There we go. The one we don't.
Sick, fat, and tired.
Sick, fat, and tired. Okay, so I'm trying to read it in a link. It doesn't work so well. So why are you sick, fat, tired? And we're going to continue these discussions. This was a very useful one on the personalization of eating your way back to sanity.